Hey guys, so today's video is going to be a little bit different of kind of videos I normally do. It's going to be a little bit of a rant, but hopefully it's more educational and like opinion based than super negative or ranty. Today's topic is going to be on false positivity and the constant need to push positivity and also to demonize negative emotions that are completely human and normal, and I'm going to tell you why. So we often see this concept on social media of people just uploading their highlight reels, and there is nothing wrong with this necessarily, because I assume that most things that people experience that are negative emotions are very personal. Usually it's about a personal situation or, emotion, and that's not something we, want to publicize to the world. I think it also has to do with these certain influencers pushing this positivity lifestyle 24/7 despite the negatives and focusing on the positives instead of the negatives, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's not only is it not sustainable, but it's not really healthy. I'm not talking about being positive in a general sense, because there's nothing wrong in doing that, and I'm not talking about optimism or being an optimistic person, because those are perfectly acceptable ways of living. I'm strictly talking about false positivity and putting on that positivity. How many times am I going to say this in this video? Make it a drinking game. Actually, don't do that. It's about putting on this positive, happy mask over negative emotions and pushing down negative emotions and promoting positivity on social media as a constant, when that is just not healthy. So we see this phenomenon on social media all the time of, getting your vibration right and law of attraction and things like that. And that's not necessarily bad to believe in. If you do believe in those things, it's not always bad, but we cannot just focus on this thought process or this way of thinking to get the things that we want out of life. I think that this makes us more of like a passenger in our own experience of life and less of an active participating person, because we focus so much on the positive that we don't acknowledge the negative, and that is not a sustainable way of living. Life is positive and negative, and you cannot have all positivity without negative things in your life. You can't ignore the negative in order to only feel joy, because that will make you more miserable in the long run. And honestly, when you go through negative emotions and experiences, it makes you more of a strong, resilient person. And they're key and very important in going through life. So I want to defend negative emotions even more and explain a little bit why we tend to cling to them so much. And it's not because we're negative people per se, it's because we are made that way. Evolution made sure of that. Our brains are engineered to cling to negative experiences. It helps protect us in the future. When we have a bad experience eating a certain kind of food and we have a reaction to it, our brain will make that super important to remember so we don't eat that food again. Now obviously this was more helpful to our ancestors who needed this for survival. They needed to remember what animals were predators, what food and drinks were good to eat and drink, obviously. However, we don't need this way of thinking anymore. We are generally safe, but our brains still have evolved to be that way, which is why we tend to remember negative experiences when we look back in our past more vividly than the good ones. This is actually better explained in the Calm Masterclass on Gratitude by Tamara Levitt. If you have the Calm app, I highly recommend taking a listen to that, because it is explained way better than what I'm doing right now in this video. So I think when you think about emotions and negative things in this light, it kind of gives less power to them, because we are just simply engineered to feel negative emotions stronger and to remember negative experiences more vividly. Also remember that you are not your emotions. Instead of saying, I am stressed, I am angry, change the language to I feel stressed, I feel angry, because you are not defined by your emotions. Now, of course, I'm not implying that you can apply this concept to mental illnesses that, are derived from a genetic inheritance or chemical imbalance. I'm talking merely about the day-to-day negative emotions and experiences that we go through. So there is an argument that basically says that happiness is not critical to our survival. We can get by without feeling happy day to day, whereas discontent is critical to our survival. So this should comfort you a little bit, because it is impossible to feel happy 24/7 every single day. And attempting this through false positivity and putting on that mask and trying to fake it could just lead to deeper unhappiness because we know deep down that it's something we will never achieve. Like, none of us will ever feel happy 24/7. I feel like this video is just very, very negative, and I'm telling you, you're just gonna be miserable for the rest of your life. But it gets worse, so you ready? So we all also have a baseline level of happiness, right? We all have this kind of baseline level that we will return to even when good things happen to us. There are studies that show that lottery winners, even after winning the money, eventually they do go back to that baseline level of happiness they were at before even winning the money. So it's not a constant. It's impossible to feel an elevated level of happiness as a constant. Now, obviously this video is coming across very negative and that we're all destined to just be miserable the rest of our lives. We shouldn't even try to achieve happiness because it's something we will never truly know. But of course, that is not true. That's not the message I'm trying to put out here into the world. But happiness really depends on how we define it, because a lot of people put a lot of pressure on achieving certain goals and they're not always a guarantee, and so therefore we will never achieve happiness because we may or may not get them, whether it's the love of your life or money or a certain weight. True happiness, I believe, comes from practicing gratitude in the day-to-day things that we currently already have in our lives, because we already have them, therefore our happiness is not contingent on getting something, especially when that something isn't necessarily guaranteed. Now, I mentioned before we have a baseline level of happiness, and you might be thinking, well, if that's what I'm born with, that baseline, then I might as well not even try to change that. But it is possible to change that. You just have to work hard at it and practice and train your brain to recognize every single day the good things that you currently already have. That is where real happiness lies. It's not in the fake positivity that you see online. It's not in the things that you collect, and it's not the money that is down the road. Like, it's not in any of those things. Happiness truly lies in what you already have in your life. I think it's more optimistic and more positive to look at everything that you currently have instead of expecting certain things to happen in your life, and then at that point you will be happy instead of enjoying your current life now. Now, I also want to add that positivity does not equal happiness. Positivity is merely avoiding the negative emotions in hopes to be happy, but happiness is an emotion, and just like any emotion, positive or negative, you cannot feel it all of the time. And that's a good thing, because you don't want to feel your emotions permanently, trust me. Now, false positivity is like a mask that we want to wear because we think that people will want to be around us more, because generally positive people are better to be around. And some believe that putting on that mask of false positivity will actually trick your brain into being more positive, you know, fake it till you make it, right? Well, wrong, actually, because it can cause dissonance in your true feelings and make you more miserable. There's a quote that I really like that says, "The unhappy person is happier being unhappy than they are when trying to be happy." So it's not that positivity is bad. I don't want to say that being positive is a bad thing to do. I'm talking about false positivity. I'm talking about covering the negative emotions and kind of pushing them down to deal with at another time or never at all. There's a social pressure to constantly be positive all the time, and we tend to pursue the extreme version of that, and that's not healthy nor sustainable. We also tend to exaggerate our happiness and our positivity and positive behavior in hopes to be accepted, more accepted in group settings and things, because like I said, positive people tend to be better to be around. But if everyone is doing this and everyone has that false positivity mask on, covering their negative emotions, wouldn't everyone just be happier being themselves and actually letting themselves feel whatever emotions are going on inside? So I'm gonna go back to the fake it till you make it mentality, right? There's a quote from Susan David, who is amazing and kind of inspired this whole video. I just recently discovered her. She has a whole TED Talk on this subject, by the way, if you want to know more about it. I also purchased her book and started reading that, and I highly recommend it. I will link it down below. So she says, "When we push aside normal emotions to embrace false positivity, we lose our capacity to develop skills to deal with the world as it is, not as we wish it to be." So there's a term in psychology called amplification, that when we actually push down our emotions, they tend to get stronger. And like Susan David says, they will eventually come out. Whether they come out literally and you have to deal with them face on, or they come out to our colleagues or our significant others or our children. Negative emotions are purely a part of the human experience on this planet, and they're essential in building resilience and emotional agility, which is way more important than emotional rigidity, which Susan David talks about in her TED Talk. Like I said, I will link it below if you want to know more and have her go more into depth about it. She also recommends identifying specific negative emotions as critical to work through them. And you actually feel happier when you address your negative emotions that you're feeling head on. You identify them, you specify them. So I want to extend this to relationships and love as well, because I think a lot of people have this misconception that relationships are meant to be happy and positive every single day. We see this on social media a lot. A lot of people, you know, post about how wonderful their significant others are and everything, and that's great, but they're not gonna post when things are negative, you know? So it can be extended to relationships. As much as you see the highlight reel of people's actual lives, they're also doing that for their relationships. So don't let that put a pressure on you, because it's completely normal to have days when you're bored, days when you disagree or argue, and days when you're feeling negative emotions, or both of you are feeling negative emotions. Especially in long-term relationships, it's going to happen. When you have to go through life with someone as a partner, it's just that you're a partner in life. There's gonna be negative things thrown your way. There's gonna be experiences, emotions, things that are bad. And it's about how you work through them together. And it's really about being vulnerable enough to experience those dark days together and not put on this false positivity mask with your partner, because that is not going to strengthen your relationship. So positive thinking, I think, should not be responsible for our emotional and mental state. I think this puts too much emphasis and responsibility and making it feel like it's in our power, because if we're just positive, we stay positive, and if we're encouraged to be positive, that means it's in our power to not be negative, and that's not always the case. We are not always in control of our emotions, and if we feel a negative emotion, it's okay to feel that and let yourself feel that. It's not always within our power to change it just by being positive. And the sooner that we look at negative emotions and acknowledge them and identify them, the sooner we can work through them and have them pass. I think relying on positive thinking to bring you everything you want in your life is a very passive, shallow way of thinking, and I don't think it'll work. If you're just being positive and promoting positivity, that's not always gonna bring you positive things. Like Susan David says, emotions like anger and guilt are beacons for our values, and so when we push down those negative emotions, we're essentially ignoring our values. When we feel a strong emotion like that, it's because we're passionate about that thing that we're upset about. And if we ignore these, we're ignoring the exact thing that makes us human. And when we force positivity and wear this fake mask to cover our negative emotions and push them down, we're ignoring the human side of ourselves, and we're not growing as people. So you're gonna stay stagnant in life if you just don't acknowledge all the emotions and the range that you're going to go through in life. The truth is, we have to change what happiness means to us. We have to redefine it in our society, because I think we put too much pressure and emphasis on things that are in the far out future, and by looking off into the distance and saying that is the goal, once I achieve that I will be happy, we're ignoring the day-to-day happiness that we're experiencing every single day just around us. It's in smaller doses, but that's what most emotions are, is feeling the little emotions throughout the day. We think we're just expecting one day happiness is gonna hit us in the face, right? Or we're just gonna be really positive one day and then everything is gonna go really well. But that's not what life is. It ebbs and flows. It's like waves. It's going to come and go. You're gonna feel happiness really strongly one moment, and then it's gonna be gone the next. And that's okay, because that's what emotions are. That's what they do. This is why living with compassion for yourself and living with gratitude is so important, because we are going to feel negative emotions. There is no level of vibration that will prevent you from feeling negative things in your life. There is no level of positive thinking that is going to prevent you from feeling these things. It's just going to happen. Bad things are going to happen to you in this life. And what's really going to help us through these tough times is accepting that we will go through these things, giving yourself compassion through them, and acknowledging that all the positive things that are happening to you on a day-to-day basis, just the little things around you. Because I can guarantee every single one of us can find at least one small thing to be grateful for. I really hope this video wasn't too much of a Debbie Downer, negative Nancy type video. I really just wanted to be more realistic and spread more realistic expectations when dealing with negative emotions, because that's a guarantee in life. You're gonna go through them, and the more that we avoid them, the more miserable that we are. So when you're feeling it, just let yourself feel it. And I highly recommend checking checking out Susan David's work, because she talks about how to separate yourself from being overwhelmed by the emotion and how to deal with it in a smart, like, logical way. But sometimes that's just not gonna happen. You're gonna be overwhelmed by emotions, and that's just the way of life. This kind of ties into my kind of goal for the new year of being honest and open about my emotions with other people, not only with other people, but also with myself, and dealing with the things that I've put off dealing with, and dealing with the negative emotions that I feel day to day as they come, so I'm not overwhelmed or bombarded by them later. I'd love to hear your kind of tips on how to deal with negative emotions, how you go through life, how you are surviving life as of now, and yeah, leave a comment, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.